All right, let's dive in today. We're talking about something that might not sound super exciting at first glance, but it's actually a cornerstone of making sure the products we use every single day are safe and good quality.
Yeah, I mean, think about it, especially in industries like pharmaceuticals or food. You really want to know the stuff you're putting in or on your body is made properly.
Absolutely, and that's where these things called batch production records come in.
Batch records.
They're basically like a super detailed history of how a specific batch of a product is made.
Like a step-by-step from the very beginning to the very end.
So if you're interested in peeling back the curtain and seeing how manufacturers actually ensure their products are top-notch, stick with us because we're going deep on this.
We've got a mountain of info to dig through for this.
Oh yeah, like what?
Well, we've got regulations straight from the Code of Federal
The
Regulation.
CFR.
Right, specifically the parts that cover good manufacturing practices and what you need to do for different types of products.
Makes sense.
Then we're looking at global best practices from ICH guidelines too.
So not just US-centric.
Exactly, we're going international. And we've also got FDA guidance documents.
So we can get a sense of what the FDA is really looking for.
Exactly. Plus, we've got some really cool industry analyses of FDA observations. These are like insights into what the FDA actually flags as problems.
Very interesting, very interesting.
And to round things out, we're also going to pull from GMP and GDP books and videos, practical knowledge from the trenches.
All right, so a pretty well-rounded deep dive then.
Oh, absolutely.
So what's the mission here? What are we trying to accomplish with all of this?
Well, we really want to break down batch records for everyone. What information needs to be in there?
Yeah.
Why is it so important to keep such detailed records throughout the whole process?
Right, right.
How do these records actually guarantee the product's good?
Uh-huh.
And what about when things go wrong? Nobody's perfect.
Oh, yeah. Mistakes happen.
How do these records help figure out what went wrong and how to fix it?
That's key.
Plus, we'll see how they tie into making the entire process better over time, continuously improving things.
Awesome. All right, so let's get down to the nuts and bolts here. What exactly are the absolutely essential parts of a batch record?
Well, the core idea is this. Batch records are supposed to paint a complete and accurate picture of what happened to that specific batch as it was made.
A sort of birth certificate to finished product type thing?
Yeah, exactly. And the regulations are very clear. They need to match the master production record,
Which is?
like the official blueprint for how to make that specific product.
So not just any old recipe, but the exact approved instructions.
Exactly. And then, according to the regulations and everything we've seen, this record has to document every important step in the process.
So we're talking manufacturing, processing, packaging,
All of that,
even storing the batch.
even that.
Wow.
And for every single step, you need the date and time,
Okay.
who was involved,
Uh-huh.
which means signatures or initials, and the exact equipment they used. It's like a very official time-stamped logbook.
So like a diary for the product, basically.
Yeah, very, very official one.
Makes sense. What other stuff gets written down in this product diary?
Well, you have to record exactly how much of each ingredient was used.
Oh, right. To make sure they're following the recipe precisely.
Precisely. And then, really important, you've got the test results.
Tests.
Yeah. Any test they did during production and on the final product.
Oh, right. To make sure it meets quality standards.
Exactly, at every stage.
Makes sense. What about the tools and machines they use?
Oh, those are definitely part of the story, too.
Yeah.
You need records of when they were calibrated and maintained.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it shows that the equipment was working correctly and giving accurate readings during production.
I see, I see. Now, let's be real. Things don't always go perfectly right.
Oh, absolutely not.
How do batch records deal with those unexpected hiccups?
That is a super important point. Anytime something deviates from the standard procedure, you've got to document it.
So write it down in the batch record.
And the batch record, and you need a full investigation, too, to figure out what happened.
A whole investigation.
Oh, yeah. Both regulations and industry best practices are very clear on that. You need to know exactly what happened, why it happened, and how it happened.
So it's not enough to just say, oops, something went wrong.
No, you need the whole story. And based on that, you document the corrective actions you took.
So how they fix the problem.
Right, and also the preventive actions to make sure it doesn't happen again.
So they're not just putting out fires, they're trying to prevent them in the first place.
Exactly. And then there's the computer systems.
Oh, right, because so much of manufacturing relies on computers these days.
Yeah, so how you control those systems is also super important.
In what way?
Well, you have to make sure the data going in and out of the systems is accurate.
Makes sense.
And you need good backups, just in case.
So you don't lose the entire history of the batch if the computer trashes.
Exactly. Now, we've talked about different industries, but there are some specifics for certain products, like dietary supplements have their own rules.
Different from, say, pharmaceuticals.
Right. For supplements, you have to document the tests that prove the product meets its specs.
Okay.
But here's something interesting. If a company thinks they don't need to do certain tests on the photo product,
They can just skip them.
well, they have to justify it in the batch record.
So explain why they think those tests aren't necessary.
Yeah, and how they're still making sure the quality is there, even without those specific tests.
That makes sense. It seems like there's just a ton of detail that has to be recorded.
A ton.
Are there any, guiding principles for how all this should be done?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Lay it on me.
That's where good documentation practices come in, GDP. Lots of sources emphasize recording the when, the where, the who, the why, and the how for every important action. You want a clear and complete and honest record of everything.
Not just what happened, but the whole context around it.
Exactly. And remember those signatures and initials we talked about?
Uh-huh.
Those aren't just for show. They're basically a legal statement saying that person did that thing at that time.
So these records are serious business.
Oh, yeah, they can be used in court.
Wow.
So accuracy, completeness, and timeliness are really important. If you don't do it right and right away, the whole record becomes unreliable.
There's that saying, if it isn't written down, it didn't happen.
That's the philosophy here,
Uh-huh.
100%. If you don't have proof, it's like it never happened.
Yeah.
And you have to protect that data, too, make sure no one can mess with it.
Right. Data integrity. It has to be trustworthy.
Exactly. It can't be changed without authorization.
Okay, so it's a pretty strict system. Who decides how all this works? Who manages it?
Well, a company needs to have policies and standard operating procedures, SOPs.
SOPs, right.
Those SOPs spell out how to create and manage these records, and they have to be officially approved by the right people.
So you can't just wing it.
No way. And any changes to those master production records, the blueprints, have to be done through a controlled process and by authorized people.
So no one's sneaking in changes that could affect the product?
Nope. And then there's the whole world of electronic records and signatures.
Oh, yeah, because everyone's going digital.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those are fine. They're legally the same as paper records and signatures,
Really?
as long as they meet the specific regulations.
So they have to be secure and reliable.
And auditable, meaning you can track every change. Okay, so we've established that these records are incredibly detailed.
They are.
Why is it so crucial to be this meticulous, to write everything down as it happens? It sounds like a massive undertaking.
It does, but it's clearly important.
It is, for the safety and quality of the products. These records create a complete history of everything used and everything done for that specific batch.
Like a chain of custody for every ingredient and every process.
Exactly. If there's ever an issue, you can trace back every step.
I imagine that's incredibly helpful if something goes wrong.
It's essential. Imagine maybe a temperature reading was a little off, but no one wrote it down?
Seems like a small thing.
Maybe. But later on, there's a problem with the product, maybe even a recall.
Uh-oh.
That missing temperature reading could have been the key to figuring out what went wrong.
So even small details can be crucial.
Absolutely.
Right.
Without those details, investigations are much harder, and it takes longer to fix the problem and protect people.
So if there's a problem with a product, the batch record is like a map that shows investigators exactly where to look.
Yeah, it's the roadmap to finding the source of the problem, whether it's a bad ingredient or a mistake in the process.
And in a serious situation like a recall, I imagine these records are absolutely essential.
Oh, without a doubt. In a recall, you need to know exactly which batches are affected.
Or where they went.
Exactly. And to do that quickly and effectively, you need accurate records.
Right, to get those bad products off the shelves as soon as possible.
Right, to protect public health.
So it's not just about reacting to problems. These records are part of maintaining quality every day.
Oh, they're fundamental for that.
Yeah.
Accurate batch records prove that the company is following GMPs.
Good manufacturing practices.
Right. And when the FDA comes knocking,
For an inspection.
exactly, they look at those records. It's how they assess if the company's quality system is good.
Makes sense.
Actually, a lot of FDA citations are about bad documentation and data integrity.
So the FDA takes this stuff very seriously.
Very seriously. Batch records are a cornerstone of a quality system. They show that products are consistently made the right way. And remember, these are legal documents. There are regulations on what needs to be in them and how long you have to keep them.
Right, right. It sounds like managing those deviations, those times when things go off script, is a big part of this.
It is. Any deviation has to be documented in the batch record.
And that triggers an investigation.
Automatically. It's like the batch record is raising a flag saying, hey, something weird happened here.
I see. And the goal of the investigation is to figure out what exactly went wrong.
More than that, you want to find the root cause.
So not just the symptom, but the underlying problem.
Exactly. Why did this happen in the first place? Once you know that, you can take corrective actions.
To fix the immediate problem.
Right, and preventive actions to stop it from happening again.
And all of that is documented and linked to the original batch record.
Everything. So you have this central point where you can see the problem, the investigation, and the solution.
It's all connected.
It is. And it's important to remember, KPA, those corrective and preventive actions, are about getting things back under control.
Right.
But it's not quite the same as continuous improvement.
Which is more about proactively making things better.
Exactly. And to see if those KPA actions are actually working, you look at trends in later batches.
So are similar problems popping up again?
Exactly. You want to see if the changes you made actually made a difference.
It sounds like it creates a cycle of learning and improvement.
That's the goal. And this is where quality risk management comes in.
Risk management.
Yeah, when you find risks through these deviations, you can use that knowledge to make the process better.
Interesting.
And those improvements are then built into the master production records and other documents.
So how future batches are made is influenced by what happened in the past.
Exactly. And any changes to those master documents have to be carefully controlled, usually because of KPA investigations or risk assessments. So these batch records, they're not just static documents, they're actively helping to improve the process.
Wow, this has been a really eye-opening deep dive. These batch records are clearly so much more than just paperwork.
We really are. They're a comprehensive history of every batch, a legal document, and a tool for continuous improvement.
And it all comes down to accuracy, completeness, and doing it in real time.
Those are the keys to ensuring quality, complying with regulations, and making things better over time.
It's really fascinating to think about how this level of detailed record keeping could be used in other areas.
Definitely.
So, listener, here's something to think about. What can you take away from this deep dive? What principles from batch records, like meticulous documentation, traceability, and using the past to improve the future, could you apply to your own work or life? It's something to ponder until our next deep dive. Thanks for joining us.